My parents demanded to cancel my engagement party for my adored little sister's promotion. Of course, I refused. Now they're mad at me. You ungrateful girl, you've humiliated your sister. The next morning, I found out the truth that changed everything. Hi, I'm Madison, and this is the story of how I finally learned to stop being invisible in my own family. But to understand what happened at my engagement party, you need to know the pattern that's been going on my entire life. Growing up, I always knew I was different from my little sister Sarah. Not in a bad way, or at least I didn't think it was bad back then. Sarah was the sparkly one, the one who lit up every room she walked into. She had this infectious laugh and these big brown eyes that could get her out of any trouble. Me? I was the responsible one. The one who cleaned up messes, both literally and figuratively. The first time I really noticed the difference, I was 8 years old. It was the week of my birthday, my 8th birthday, that I'd been planning for months. I'd written out invitations by hand for all my classmates, picked out decorations with Mom, and even helped her plan the menu: chocolate cake with vanilla frosting, pizza from Tony's, and games in the backyard. I was so excited I could barely sleep. But 3 days before my party, Sarah caught a cold. Nothing serious, just sniffles and a slight cough. She was 4 at the time, still in that adorable toddler stage where everything she did was considered precious. When Mum felt her forehead and declared she might have a fever, everything changed. "Madison, honey," Mum said, sitting on my bed that night, "we might need to postpone your party. Sarah's not feeling well, and we can't risk getting the other children sick." I remember staring at her, not understanding. "But she's not that sick, Mum. She was playing with her dolls this afternoon." "I know, sweetheart, but we have to be careful. We'll reschedule for next weekend, okay?" Next weekend came and went. Sarah was completely fine by then, running around the house like her usual energetic self. But somehow my party never got rescheduled. There was always something. Sarah had a play date, or Mom was tired, or Dad had to work. My 8th birthday party just disappeared. That was the beginning of a pattern I wouldn't fully recognize until I was much older. When I was 16, it happened again. This time it was my sweet 16 party. The one milestone birthday I'd been dreaming about for years. I'd saved up my babysitting money to help pay for decorations, and Mum had actually seemed excited about planning it. We'd booked the community centre, sent out invitations, and I'd even bought a new dress with my own money. The morning of my party, I woke up to find Mom on the phone in the kitchen, her voice tense with worry. "Yes, I understand it's an amazing opportunity," she was saying, "but it's such short notice." Sarah, now 12 and already showing signs of the dramatic flair that would define her teenage years, was sprawled across the kitchen counter, clutching her phone like it was the most important thing in the world. "Mum, this is my chance," she was saying. The casting director said, "I have exactly the look they're searching for. If I miss this audition, I'll never get another opportunity like this." My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming before Mom even turned to me with that apologetic look I seen so many times before. "Madison, sweetheart, there's been a change of plans. The audition was for a commercial, some local car dealership that needed a fresh-faced preteen for their back-to-school promotion." Sarah had been taking drama classes at the community centre, and her teacher had recommended her. The casting call was that afternoon, the same time as my party. "Can't she go to the audition after the party?" I asked, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "It's just a few hours." "The audition is 3 hours away, Madison. We'd need to leave by noon to get there in time, and who knows how long it'll take. These things can run really late." I looked at my sister, expecting her to say something, to maybe suggest that she could skip this one audition for my birthday. But Sarah just looked at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Madison, you understand, right? This could be my big break. Birthdays happen every year, but opportunities like this are once in a lifetime." Once in a lifetime. At 12 years old, she was already talking like missing one audition would ruin her entire career, and everyone just nodded along like it made perfect sense. So my Sweet 16 party was cancelled. Mum promised we'd do something special, just the family, when we got back from Sarah's audition. But when they returned that evening, Sarah bubbling with excitement about how well it went, even though she didn't get the part, everyone was too tired for celebration. We ordered pizza and watched Sarah reenact her entire audition performance instead. I spent my 16th birthday watching my sister pretend to sell cars to an imaginary camera. College was supposed to be my escape, my chance to shine without living in Sarah's shadow, and for 4 years it was. I majored in marketing, made the Dean's List every semester, and landed internships that most students could only dream of. I was finally the star of my own story. My college graduation should have been one of the proudest moments of my life. I was graduating summa cum laude with a job offer already lined up at a prestigious marketing firm in the city. I'd worked my butt off for 4 years, and it was all paying off. I sent my family the invitation months in advance. I called to remind them about the date. I even offered to help pay for their hotel room so they wouldn't have to drive 4 hours each way in one day. The week before graduation, Sarah called me, and I could hear the excitement in her voice before she even said hello. "Madison, guess what? I got a call back." Sarah was 17 then, a senior in high school, and she'd been auditioning for everything from school plays to local theatre productions. This callback was for the lead role in the community theatre's summer production of Grease. She'd be playing Sandy, her dream role. "That's great, Sarah," I said, genuinely happy for her. "When's the callback?" "That's the thing, it's the same day as your graduation." "Can you believe the timing? But Madison, this is huge for me. The director of this production has connections to regional theatres. This could be my stepping stone to real professional work." My heart sank, but I tried to stay positive. "Well, what time is the callback? Maybe you can do both." "It's at 2 in the afternoon, and the director said it could take several hours. They're doing full scene work with different combinations of actors. Plus, I'd be so nervous about the audition that I wouldn't be able to focus on your graduation anyway." I waited for her to say she'd skip the callback. I waited for her to say that my graduation was more important. But the silence stretched on until I realized she was waiting for me to give her permission to miss the most important day of my academic life. "Madison," she said finally, "you understand, right?" There it was again, that phrase that had haunted my childhood. "You understand, right?" As if understanding somehow made it hurt less. When I didn't answer immediately, Sarah's voice took on that wounded tone she'd perfected over the years. I mean, it's not like you won't graduate without us there. The ceremony is just a formality. But this audition could change my whole life. Just a formality. 4 years of late nights, early mornings, part-time jobs to pay for textbooks, and stress-induced breakdowns, and my graduation was just a formality. What about Mom and Dad? I asked weakly. They want to support my dreams, Madison. They know how important this is to me. Dad already said he'd drive me to the audition, and Mom wants to be there for moral support. So, while I walked across that stage to receive my diploma, the proudest moment of my life up to that point, my family was sitting in a community theatre watching my sister audition for a role she didn't even get. I have a photo from that day, me in my cap and gown, holding my diploma, standing alone outside the auditorium. My roommate's family invited me to their celebration dinner afterward, and I spent my graduation night with people who were essentially strangers, listening to them gush about their daughter's accomplishments while trying not to think about how my own family had chosen to be somewhere else. Sarah didn't get the part. She called me that night, crying about how the director had decided to go with someone older, someone with more experience. She expected me to comfort her, to tell her it would be okay, that there would be other opportunities. I did comfort her, because that's what I always did. That pattern followed me into my professional life. When I got my first promotion 6 months after starting at the marketing firm, I called home excited to share the news. I'd been moved from junior associate to associate account manager, with a significant raise and my own office. "That's wonderful, honey," Mum said, but I could hear the distraction in her voice. "Oh, hold on, Sarah, come tell Madison your news." Sarah had just finished her first semester of college, majoring in theatre with a minor in communications. She'd gotten a B+ on her final project for her intro to theatre class. "Madison, I got a B+ on my scene work. Professor Williams said I have natural instincts and real potential. He thinks I should audition for the advanced acting workshop next semester." And just like that, my promotion became background noise to Sarah's B+ in an introductory class. This was my life. Every achievement, every milestone, every moment that should have been mine got overshadowed by whatever Sarah had going on. It didn't matter if her news was smaller, less significant, or just plain ordinary. It was always treated as more important than anything I'd accomplished. I started to understand what therapists call golden child and scapegoat dynamics. Though I didn't have those terms for it yet, Sarah could do no wrong. Every minor success was celebrated like she'd won an Oscar. Every setback was treated like a tragedy that required the entire family's attention and support. Meanwhile, I was the reliable one, the one who didn't need attention or celebration because I was naturally responsible and mature for my age. My successes were expected, so they didn't warrant much fanfare. My problems were minimal because I was so good at handling things on my own. It's a special kind of pain, being invisible in your own family. Not because they don't love you, but because they love you in a way that makes you feel like you don't really matter. Like you're a supporting character in the story of their lives, never the main character in your own. By the time I was 25, I'd learned to expect it. When I got my second promotion to senior account manager, I barely mentioned it at family dinner. When I was featured in our company newsletter for landing a major client, I didn't even tell them. When I started dating Michael, I waited 3 months before introducing him to my family because I knew they'd find a way to make even my happiness about Sarah somehow. But then something shifted when I met Michael. He was different from anyone I'd ever dated, not because he was perfect, but because he saw me, really saw me. When I told him stories about my family, he didn't brush them off or tell me I was being too sensitive. He listened, really listened, and he helped me realize that what I'd normalized wasn't normal at all. "Madison," he said one night as we sat on his couch sharing takeout Chinese food and talking about our families, "when you tell me these stories, do you realize how you disappear from them? It's like you're narrating someone else's life." I'd never thought about it that way, but he was right. Even in my own memories, I was often just a bystander to Sarah's drama. Mom and Dad's devotion to her dreams, and the family's collective focus on everything except me. Michael proposed on a Tuesday evening in February, nothing fancy or elaborate, just the two of us in my apartment, him suddenly getting down on one knee after we'd finished watching a movie. It was perfect because it was ours, uncomplicated by anyone else's expectations or needs. "I want to spend my life seeing you," he said, the ring box trembling slightly in his hands. "Really seeing you every day for the rest of our lives." I said yes through tears, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt like the main character in my own story. We decided on a long engagement. Not because we weren't sure, but because we wanted to plan the wedding we actually wanted. Not the one everyone else expected. We set the date for 18 months out and started planning our engagement party for 6 months after the proposal. I was so excited about this party. For once, I was going to be the centre of attention for something positive. We'd rented the ballroom at the historic hotel downtown, hired a caterer, and invited 50 of our closest friends and family members. I'd spent weeks planning every detail, the flowers, the music, the menu, even the specific champagne we'd serve for the toast. This was going to be my moment, my celebration, the first time in my adult life where I got to stand in front of everyone and have them focus on my happiness, my future, my choices. I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. 2 days before the party, I was at my parents' house for what I thought would be a final planning meeting. Mum had offered to help coordinate with the hotel, and Dad was supposed to give me the cheque for his portion of the expenses. Sarah was there too, which wasn't unusual. At 21, she was finishing up her junior year of college and still living at home during breaks. She'd been in an unusually good mood all week, practically bouncing around the house with excitement about something, but she'd been secretive about what. I should have been suspicious. Sarah was never secretive about good news. We were sitting around the kitchen table, going over the final head count, when Sarah couldn't contain herself anymore. "I have news," she announced, practically vibrating with excitement. "I didn't want to say anything until it was official, but it's official now." She paused dramatically. Sarah always paused dramatically, waiting for us to ask for details. "I got the promotion," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "The retail store where I've been working part-time, they offered me a full-time position as assistant manager. Can you believe it? Me, an assistant manager at 21. My supervisor said I have real leadership potential and that this could be the start of a serious career in retail management." Mum gasped, like Sarah had just announced she'd been accepted to Harvard. Dad broke into a huge grin and started talking about how proud he was. And Sarah just beamed, soaking up their attention like she always did. I tried to feel happy for her, I really did. A promotion was nice, even if it was just from part-time sales associate to assistant manager at a local clothing store. But something felt off about the timing, about the way she'd kept it secret until now. "That's great, Sarah," I said, forcing a smile. "Congratulations! When do you start?" "Next Monday, and here's the best part, they want to throw me a celebration dinner this weekend. All the regional managers are going to be there and they want to introduce me to the district supervisor. This could be huge for my career." The timing hit me like a punch to the stomach. "This weekend, as in this Saturday?" Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "Well, yes, I know it's the same day as your engagement party, but Madison, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The district supervisor is only in town for the weekend, and if I make a good impression, it could fast-track my career in ways I never imagined." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to say she was kidding. But she just looked at me expectantly, like she was waiting for me to congratulate her and assure her that of course she should go to her work dinner instead of my engagement party. "Sarah," I said slowly, "I've been planning this party for 6 months. The invitations went out 2 months ago. You RSVP'd yes. I know, and I feel terrible about the timing, but this just came up. It's not like I planned it this way." I looked at my parents, expecting them to point out how unreasonable this was, how Sarah could surely reschedule a work dinner, or at least ask if she could attend both events. Instead, Mum cleared her throat and gave me that look. The one I'd been seeing my whole life, the one that meant I was about to be asked to be understanding about something completely unreasonable. "Madison, honey," she said in that careful tone she used when she was about to ask me to sacrifice something important. "This is a really big opportunity for your sister. The retail industry is so competitive, and making connections with upper management early in her career could set her up for success for years to come." "Mom," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm, "it's my engagement party. We've already paid deposits, ordered food for 50 people, booked the band. This isn't something that can just be rescheduled." Dad joined in, his voice taking on that reasonable, let's all be adults tone that I'd learned to dread. "No one's asking you to reschedule, Madison. We're just saying that maybe we should think about adjusting our plans to support Sarah's career opportunity." Adjusting our plans, how exactly? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know before anyone said a word. "Well," Mom said finally, "we were thinking that maybe we could have a smaller celebration for your engagement. Something more intimate, just immediate family. We could cancel the big party and plan something simpler for next weekend instead." I felt the familiar sensation of the world tilting, of reality shifting in that way it always did when my family decided that Sarah's needs were more important than mine. But this time felt different. This time the stakes felt higher. "You want me to cancel my engagement party?" I said, my voice flat with disbelief. "The party I've been planning for 6 months, that 50 people are expecting to attend, that we've already spent thousands of dollars on, so that Sarah can go to a work dinner for her part-time job at a clothing store." "It's not just a clothing store," Sarah protested. "It's a growing chain with real advancement opportunities. And I'm not part-time anymore. This promotion makes me full-time management. Sarah, I said, turning to face her directly, you're asking me to cancel my engagement party for an assistant manager position at a retail store. Her face flushed red. Why are you saying it like that? Like my job doesn't matter. This is important to me, Madison. And my engagement party is important to me. The words hung in the air, and I realised that this was the first time I'd ever directly stated that something was important to me without immediately following it up with understanding about why it should be less important than whatever Sarah needed. Mom and Dad exchanged a look, the kind of wordless communication that married couples develop over decades. In that look, I saw them making a decision about which daughter's needs mattered more. Madison, Dad said, his voice taking on that firm paternal tone that meant the discussion was over. We understand that this is disappointing, but family means supporting each other's dreams and opportunities. Sarah has worked really hard for this promotion, and this dinner could be crucial for her future career development. And what about my future? I asked. What about the fact that this party is important to me and Michael? What about the fact that 50 people have already made plans, taken time off work, arranged babysitters, and some of them are travelling from out of state? Those people will understand, Mum said dismissively. When you explain the situation, they'll see that this is about family supporting family. But it's not, though, I said, my voice getting stronger with each word. It's about me being asked to sacrifice something important to me so that Sarah doesn't have to choose between two things she wants to do. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, the same tears that had gotten her out of trouble and gotten her what she wanted for as long as I could remember. Madison, I can't believe you're being so selfish about this. This is my career we're talking about. This could affect my entire future. And this is my engagement, my future with Michael. Why is your future automatically more important than mine? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and I watched my family's faces as they processed what I'd just said. For a moment, I thought maybe they'd realise how this looked, how unfair it was, how they'd been doing this my entire life. Instead, Mum's face hardened into that expression I knew too well, the one that meant I was being difficult, unreasonable, selfish. Madison, she said, her voice cold with disappointment, I'm surprised at you. This isn't like you at all. You've always been so mature, so understanding about these situations. Sarah's career is just starting out and she needs our support right now. Your engagement party is just one night, but this opportunity could change her whole life trajectory. Just one night, I repeated, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. My engagement party is just one night. You know what I mean, Mom said impatiently. You and Michael are going to have a lifetime together. You'll have plenty of opportunities to celebrate, but this chance for Sarah might never come again. I looked around the table at my family, the people who were supposed to love and support me, who were supposed to care about my happiness and my milestones, and I realised that I had a choice to make. For my entire life, I'd been making the same choice over and over again. I'd been choosing to be understanding, to be mature, to put Sarah's needs before my own. I'd been choosing to be invisible so that she could shine. But sitting there, looking at the three of them, expecting me to once again sacrifice something important to me For Sarah's benefit, I realised that I was done making that choice. No, I said quietly. The words seemed to echo in the sudden silence. What? Mum asked, like she hadn't heard me correctly. No, I said again, louder this time. I'm not cancelling my engagement party. I'm not rescheduling it. I'm not making it smaller, and I'm not apologising for refusing to do so. Sarah's mouth dropped open. Dad's eyebrows shot up toward his hairline. Mum's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and then anger. Madison, Dad said in his stern voice, I think you need to reconsider. No, Dad, I don't. I've been reconsidering my whole life. I've been understanding and accommodating and mature about these situations since I was 8 years old. I'm done. You're being incredibly selfish, Sarah said, her tears starting to flow in earnest now. I can't believe my own sister won't support my career. I'm not unsupportive of your career, Sarah. I'm just not willing to sacrifice my engagement party for your work dinner. Those are two different things. How can you say those are different things? Mum demanded. This dinner could change Sarah's entire future. And this party is important to my future with Michael. It's important to me. Why is that so hard for you to understand? The frustration and hurt I'd been swallowing for years was bubbling up now, and I couldn't stop it. Do you know what it's like, I continued, my voice shaking with emotion, to never be the priority, to always be asked to step aside so Sarah can have whatever she wants? Do you have any idea how many times I've been understanding about this exact same situation? That's not fair, Madison, Dad said. We've always supported you too. When? I asked. When have you ever chosen something important to me over something Sarah wanted? When have you ever told her she needed to be understanding about my needs? The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as my parents and sister tried to come up with an example, tried to think of a single time when they'd prioritised my feelings or my important moments over Sarah's desires. They couldn't, because it had never happened. This is different, Mum said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. No, it's not. It's exactly the same pattern it's always been. Sarah wants something, so Madison has to sacrifice. Sarah has an opportunity, so Madison has to step aside. Sarah has a conflict, so Madison has to solve it by giving up whatever she had planned. I stood up from the table, my heart pounding with the adrenaline of finally saying these things out loud. Well, I'm done with that pattern. I'm having my engagement party on Saturday as planned. Sarah can choose to attend her work dinner instead if she wants to, but I'm not changing my plans to accommodate her schedule. Madison! Mum's voice was sharp with disapproval. Sit back down. We're not finished discussing this. Yes, we are, I said, grabbing my purse from the counter. There's nothing to discuss. The party is happening as planned. You can choose whether or not to attend. As I headed toward the door, I heard Sarah call after me, her voice thick with tears and indignation. Fine, I'll just have to miss the most important career opportunity I've ever had because my sister is too selfish to be flexible. I paused at the door, my hand on the knob, and turned back to look at her. Sarah, I said, my voice calmer than I felt, you're not missing anything because of me. You're choosing between two things you want to do. That's not my problem to solve. I left then, walking out of my childhood home, with my heart pounding and my hands shaking, but also with a sense of clarity I'd never felt before. For the first time in my life, I'd chosen myself. I drove straight to Michael's apartment, and the moment he opened the door and saw my face, he knew something had happened. "What's wrong?" he asked, pulling me inside and wrapping me in his arms. I told him everything: the promotion, the dinner, the demand that I cancel our party, and my refusal to do so. I told him about the pattern, about the years of stepping aside, about finally saying no. Michael listened without interrupting, his arms tightening around me as I talked. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I'm proud of you," he said finally. "Are you?" I asked, suddenly unsure. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am being selfish. "Madison," he said, pulling back to look at me directly, "wanting your engagement party to happen as planned isn't selfish. Expecting your family to prioritize your important moments sometimes isn't selfish. Standing up for yourself after years of being asked to sacrifice for someone else isn't selfish." He took my hands in his voice gentle but firm. "You know what would be selfish? Demanding that Sarah miss her work dinner to attend our party. But that's not what you're doing. You're just refusing to cancel our party for her convenience. There's a difference." That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about my family, about the disappointment in my parents' voices, about Sarah's tears. Part of me wanted to call them and apologize, to find some compromise that would make everyone happy. But a bigger part of me, the part that had been silent for too long, knew that this wasn't really about the engagement party. This was about me finally drawing a line, finally saying that my needs mattered too. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages from my family. The messages started around midnight and didn't stop until nearly 7 in the morning. Most were from Sarah, long, rambling texts that alternated between guilt trips and accusations. Some were from my parents, each message more disapproving than the last. A few were from relatives who'd apparently been recruited to convince me to see reason. I sat on Michael's couch in my pajamas, scrolling through the digital assault with a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands. Sarah's messages were the most intense. "Madison, I've been crying all night. I can't believe you'd put a party over my career. This is the biggest opportunity I've ever had, and you're ruining it for me. How can you be so cruel to your own sister?" Then, an hour later, "I called in sick to work today because I'm too upset to function. I hope you're happy. You've literally made me too sick to work." Another hour. "Mum is heartbroken. She keeps saying she doesn't know what happened to her sweet, understanding Madison. You're breaking this family apart over one stupid party." My parents' messages were shorter, but somehow more cutting. "Very disappointed in your selfishness, Madison. This isn't the daughter we raised." That one was from Dad. Mum had sent, "Please reconsider. You're hurting your sister terribly, and for what? Pride?" The relatives' messages were variations on the same theme, appeals to my sense of family loyalty, reminders about how much Sarah meant to all of us, suggestions that I was being unreasonable and should be the bigger person. Michael found me there an hour later, still scrolling through the messages, with tears streaming down my face. "Hey," he said gently, sitting beside me and taking the phone from my hands. "You don't have to read all of this right now." "They hate me," I whispered. "My whole family hates me because I won't cancel our party." "They don't hate you," Michael said, though I could hear the anger in his voice as he glanced at my phone screen. They're just not used to you standing up for yourself. That doesn't make you wrong, Madison. It makes them wrong for expecting you to always give in. I wanted to believe him, but the weight of all those messages, all that disappointment and anger directed at me, was crushing. I'd spent my whole life avoiding exactly this situation, being the target of my family's displeasure. It felt like drowning. Maybe I should just cancel it, I said quietly. Maybe it's not worth all this drama. Michael was quiet for a long moment, and when I looked at him, his expression was serious in a way I'd rarely seen. Madison, he said carefully, I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. If we cancel this party, if you give in to this pressure, what do you think will happen the next time there's a conflict between what you want and what Sarah wants? I opened my mouth to say it would be different, that this was just about bad timing, that normally we could work things out. But the words died in my throat, because I knew he was right. If you cancel this party, Michael continued, you're not just cancelling one event. You're confirming to your family that your needs will always come second to Sarah's, no matter how unreasonable her demands become. And Madison, I love you too much to watch you disappear into that pattern again. His words hit me like a revelation. This wasn't just about the engagement party. This was about whether I was going to spend the rest of my life being invisible in my own family, or whether I was finally going to stand up and claim my place. What if they don't come? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. What if I insist on having the party and they boycott it entirely? Then that's their choice, Michael said, and it will tell you everything you need to know about how much they actually value your happiness. I spent the rest of that Friday alternating between anxiety and determination. I didn't respond to any of the messages from my family, which only seemed to generate more messages. By evening, Sarah had escalated to calling me directly every 30 minutes, leaving increasingly dramatic voice mails. Madison, please pick up. I'm begging you. I've never asked you for anything like this before. Please don't make me choose between my career and your party. You know I love you, but this opportunity means everything to me. Can't you please just be flexible this one time? The phrase, this one time, almost made me laugh if it wasn't so heartbreaking. This wasn't one time, this was every time for my entire life. Saturday morning arrived grey and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I'd barely slept, and I kept checking my phone every few minutes to see if anyone from my family had changed their mind about attending. Michael and I arrived at the hotel early to oversee the final setup. The ballroom looked beautiful, exactly like I'd envisioned it. Round tables with white linens and centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath, string lights draped across the ceiling, a small dance floor in the center with a jazz quartet setting up in the corner. It was elegant and romantic and everything I'd dreamed of. But as I watched the catering staff arrange the cocktail tables and the florist make final adjustments to the arrangements, all I could think about was the 3 empty seats that would be at our family table. They still might show up, Michael said, reading my thoughts as he came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. No, I said quietly, they won't. Sarah's work dinner starts at 6. And she'll want to be there early to make a good impression. They'll drive her there and stay to support her, just like they always do. Then that's their loss, he said, kissing the top of my head. Look around, Madison. Look at all the people who are coming here tonight to celebrate us, to celebrate you. Don't let the 3 people who chose not to be here overshadow the 50 who chose to show up. He was right, of course. Our friends started arriving around 6, and the energy in the room immediately lifted. These were people who knew our story, who'd watched our relationship grow, who were genuinely excited to celebrate our engagement. Michael's parents were there, beaming with pride and treating me like the daughter they'd always wanted. My college roommate had flown in from Portland. My work friends had all dressed up and brought thoughtful gifts. But I couldn't stop checking the entrance, hoping against hope that I'd see my parents and Sarah walk through those doors. At 6:30, my grandmother arrived. I hadn't expected her to come. At 82, she rarely went out in the evenings anymore, and I'd assumed that if my parents weren't coming, she wouldn't either. But there she was, elegant in a navy blue dress and her good pearls, being helped to our table by the hotel staff. "Grandma!" I rushed over to her, tears springing to my eyes. "You came?" "Of course I came, sweetheart," she said, patting my cheek with her soft, wrinkled hand. "This is your engagement party. Wild horses couldn't have kept me away." "But Mom and Dad, I thought maybe—" "Your parents made their choice, Madison," she said firmly. "And you made yours. I happen to think you made the right one." I stared at her, surprised. "You do?" "Honey, I've been watching this family for 82 years. I've seen how these patterns develop, how they get passed down from generation to generation. Your mother was the overlooked child in our family too, always overshadowed by her flashier siblings. I'd hoped she wouldn't repeat that pattern with her own daughters, but she shrugged sadly. Sometimes people do what they know, even when they know it's wrong. "Grandma," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "am I being selfish? Everyone says I'm being selfish." She took my hands in hers, her grip surprisingly strong for someone her age. "Let me tell you something about selfishness, dear. Selfish is expecting someone else to sacrifice their important moments for your convenience. Selfish is making your child feel guilty for wanting their own needs to matter. Selfish is teaching one daughter that she's more important than the other." Her eyes flashed with a fire I'd never seen before. "You standing up for yourself after years of being pushed aside. That's not selfish, Madison. That's survival." Those words, "that's survival," hit me like a lightning bolt. That's exactly what this was. I wasn't being mean or petty or unreasonable. I was fighting for my right to exist as a full person in my own family. The party officially started at 7, and by 7:15, the ballroom was full of laughter and conversation. Michael gave a beautiful toast about love and partnership and building a life with someone who truly sees you. I managed to give a response without crying, thanking everyone for being there and for being part of our story. It was almost 8 o'clock when my phone buzzed with a call from my mother. I stepped outside the ballroom to answer it, my heart pounding with hope that maybe they'd change their minds. Maybe they were calling to say they were on their way. "Madison," Mum's voice was cold and clipped. "I hope you're satisfied." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Sarah is devastated, absolutely devastated. She's at her work dinner right now, trying to make a good impression on these important people. But she's so upset about your selfishness that she can barely function. She's been crying on and off all day. I closed my eyes, leaning against the wall in the hotel corridor. Mom! Don't mom me. Do you have any idea what you've done? Your sister needed your support tonight, and instead you chose to humiliate her by forcing her to miss your party. These regional managers are asking where her family is, why no one came to support her at this important dinner. And she has to explain that her sister was too selfish to be flexible about party planning. The words hit me like physical blows, but underneath the familiar guilt and shame, I felt something new stirring. Anger. She chose not to come to my party, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I never forced her to do anything. You backed her into a corner. You knew she couldn't miss this work dinner. But you refused to be reasonable about rescheduling. You manipulated the situation so she'd have to choose, and then you acted like the victim when she chose her career. I didn't manipulate anything, Mom. She got invited to a work the same day as my engagement party, and expected me to cancel my party to accommodate her schedule. That's not manipulation. That's called having a conflict and having to make a choice. It's called being part of a family, Madison. Families support each other. They make sacrifices for each other. But apparently, you're too selfish to understand that anymore. The word selfish was like a match to gasoline. All the years of swallowing my feelings, all the times I'd been understanding and accommodating, all the sacrifices I'd made that had never been acknowledged or appreciated came flooding back. Selfish? I repeated, my voice rising. You want to talk about selfish? Let's talk about selfish, Mom. Selfish is expecting your daughter to cancel her engagement party with 2 days' notice. Selfish is making that same daughter feel guilty for refusing to do so. Selfish is calling her on the night of her party to berate her instead of just being happy for her. How dare you? Selfish, I continued, cutting her off, is spending the last 27 years making one daughter feel like she doesn't matter as much as the other one. Selfish is cancelling birthday parties and skipping graduations and dismissing achievements because Sarah always needs something more. That is not selfish, I said, my voice echoing in the empty hallway, is calling your daughter names on what should be one of the happiest nights of her life, instead of being here celebrating with her. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the sounds of the party continuing behind me, laughter and music and the clinking of glasses. And I realised that I was missing my own celebration to have this conversation. You ungrateful girl, Mom said finally, her voice shaking with rage. After everything we've done for you, after all the love and support we've given you over the years, this is how you repay us? By being cruel to your sister and disrespectful to your parents? What love and support? I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. When have you ever supported something that was important to me? When have you ever put my needs first? We've supported you your entire life. We paid for your college. You skipped my college graduation to take Sarah to an audition she didn't even get. You cancelled my 16th birthday party for her audition that didn't lead anywhere. You've spent 27 years making me feel invisible, and now you're calling me ungrateful because I finally refused to disappear on command. I could hear Mom breathing heavily on the other end of the line, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, colder, and more final than I'd ever heard it. If this is who you really are, Madison, if this is the selfish, ungrateful person you've become, then maybe it's better that we're not at your party. Maybe it's better that we see your true colours now, before it's too late. Maybe it is, I said quietly. Don't expect us to be at your wedding, she said, and the line went dead. I stood in that empty hotel corridor, staring at my phone, feeling like I'd just been punched in the stomach. The finality of her words, "Don't expect us to be at your wedding," hit me like a tsunami of grief and shock. This was really happening. My family was really choosing Sarah's work dinner over my engagement party. And now they were threatening to skip my wedding too. All because I'd refused to cancel my own celebration to accommodate my sister's schedule. I must have been standing there for a long time, because eventually Michael came looking for me. "Madison?" His voice was gentle, concerned. "People are asking where you are." I looked at him. Through tears, I didn't remember starting to cry. "They're not coming to my wedding." He didn't ask for details. He just pulled me into his arms and held me while I sobbed in that empty hallway, mourning the family I'd thought I had, and grieving the realization that their love had always been conditional on my willingness to make myself smaller. "I'm sorry," I whispered against his chest. "I'm so sorry I'm crying at our engagement party." "Don't apologize," he said fiercely. "Don't you dare apologize for having feelings about this. What they're doing to you is cruel, and you have every right to be upset." "But I'm ruining our party." "You're not ruining anything. You're dealing with something incredibly painful, and that's okay. That's human." He pulled back to look at me, his hands gentle on my face as he wiped away my tears. "Madison, listen to me. What happened just now, that conversation with your mother that wasn't about you being wrong or selfish or ungrateful, that was about them realizing they can't control you anymore, and they're lashing out because they're losing their power over you. But what if they're right? What if I am—" "Stop," he said firmly. "Don't let their words get in your head. You know what you've sacrificed for them over the years. You know how many times you've put their needs before your own. One time, you refuse to do that, and suddenly you're selfish and ungrateful. That's not about you, Madison. That's about them." I took a shaky breath, trying to absorb his words, trying to believe them. "Come back inside," he said gently. "Come back to our party, to the people who love you and are here to celebrate with us. Don't let their absence steal this moment from you." He was right. I couldn't change my family's choice, but I could choose how to respond to it. I could let their absence ruin my night, or I could focus on the people who had chosen to be there. We walked back into the ballroom together, and I was immediately surrounded by warmth and love. My grandmother squeezed my hand and didn't ask where I'd been. Michael's parents made sure I had champagne and asked if I was okay. My friends pulled me onto the dance floor and made me laugh despite everything. But the real surprise came around 9 o'clock, just as I was finally starting to relax and enjoy myself. I was talking to my college roommate about wedding planning when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Excuse me, is this the Thompson-Miller engagement party?" I turned around to see a woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a black cocktail dress, with silver hair styled perfectly and intelligent blue eyes that looked somehow familiar. "Yes," I said uncertainly. I'm Madison Miller, the bride-to-be." "Oh, Wonderful, the woman's face lit up with genuine warmth. I'm Margaret Thompson, Michael's aunt. I'm so sorry I'm late. My flight from Denver was delayed and I came straight from the airport. Michael appeared at my side, his face breaking into a huge grin. Aunt Margaret, I can't believe you made it. I wouldn't miss it for the world, she said, hugging him tightly before turning back to me. Madison, it's such a pleasure to finally meet you. Michael has told me so much about you, and I have to say I'm impressed by what I've heard. Thank you, I said, confused but touched by her warmth. It's lovely to meet you too. Actually, Margaret said, glancing around the room with approval, I was hoping we could chat for a few minutes. Would you mind if I stole the bride-to-be for a quick conversation? Michael looked puzzled, but nodded. Of course. Madison, Aunt Margaret is the one I told you about. The one who runs the marketing firm in Denver. My eyes widened. Michael had mentioned his Aunt Margaret several times. She was something of a legend in their family, a woman who'd built a multi-million-dollar marketing company from nothing, and was known for her sharp business instincts and no-nonsense approach to life. Margaret led me to a quieter corner of the ballroom, near the windows that overlooked the hotel gardens. Madison, she said, once we were seated, I have to tell you something. I didn't just come here for the party. I came because Michael told me about your situation with your family, and I wanted to meet the young woman who finally found the backbone to stand up to a lifetime of manipulation. I blinked in surprise. He told you about that. He did, and I have to say I'm impressed. Do you know how rare it is for someone to break out of that kind of family dynamic? Most people spend their whole lives being doormats, letting family members walk all over them because they're too afraid of conflict or too guilty about setting boundaries. I don't feel very brave, I admitted. I feel like I've torn my family apart. Honey, Margaret said, her voice gentle but firm, you didn't tear anything apart. You just stopped holding it together at your own expense. There's a difference. She leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious. Can I tell you something about my own family, my own story? I nodded. I was the oldest of 4 children, born to parents who believed that the oldest should always sacrifice for the younger ones. My whole childhood was spent giving up things I wanted so my siblings could have what they wanted. My clothes, my toys, my time, my attention from my parents, everything was always handed down to them while I was told to be grateful for whatever was left over. Her voice carried the weight of old pain, old memories. When I was 25, my youngest sister got married. Big, fancy wedding, all the bells and whistles. 6 months later, I got engaged to a wonderful man, the love of my life. But when we started planning our wedding, my sister announced she was having marital problems and needed the family's support. My parents asked me to postpone my wedding so we could all focus on helping her through her crisis. I felt my heart sink knowing where this story was going. And you know what I did? I postponed it. Because that's what I'd always done. I was understanding, accommodating, mature. I put my sister's needs before my own, just like I'd been trained to do my whole life. What happened? My sister's marriage problems resolved themselves in about a month. Turned out to be just a silly argument that got blown out of proportion. But by then, my fiancé had started to see the pattern. He saw how my family treated me, how they expected me to always come last, and he began to wonder if I'd ever be able to put our marriage first. Margaret's voice became quieter, sadder. He called off the engagement, said he loved me, but he couldn't marry someone who would never be able to prioritise their own family over their birth family's demands. He was right, of course. At that point in my life, I couldn't. I didn't know how. I felt tears spring to my eyes. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry for me, honey. Be proud of yourself, because you're doing at 27 what it took me until I was 35 to figure out. You're choosing your own life, your own happiness, your own future, and that takes incredible strength. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Your family is going to try to make you feel guilty about this choice. They're going to tell you you're selfish, ungrateful, that you're tearing the family apart. They might even threaten to cut you off entirely, to skip your wedding, to make you choose between them and Michael. They already have, I whispered. Good, Margaret said firmly, surprising me, because now you know exactly where you stand. Now you know that their love comes with conditions, that their support depends on your willingness to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. She stood up, smoothing down her dress. Madison, I want you to remember something. The people who truly love you, the people who deserve a place in your life, they want you to be happy. They want you to stand up for yourself, to have boundaries, to choose your own well-being. They don't punish you for refusing to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. She gestured toward the ballroom full of people celebrating our engagement. Look around at everyone who's here tonight. Look at your grandmother who came despite her age and despite the family drama. Look at Michael's parents who are treating you like their own daughter. Look at your friends who took time out of their lives to celebrate your happiness. These are the people who deserve your loyalty, Madison. These are the people who've earned a place at your wedding. As Margaret walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts, I looked around the ballroom with new eyes. She was right. This room was full of people who loved me without conditions, who supported my happiness without expecting me to sacrifice for it. And for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel, relief. The next morning, I woke up in Michael's apartment with a mild hangover and a phone full of notifications. But these weren't angry messages from my family this time. These were photos and videos from the party, thank you messages from friends, and social media posts from the evening. I scrolled through them, smiling at pictures of Michael and me cutting the engagement cake, dancing our first dance as an engaged couple, laughing with friends. We looked happy. We looked free. There was one notification that caught my attention. A friend request on Facebook from someone named David Miller. The name was familiar, but I couldn't place it until I clicked on his profile and saw his photo. Uncle David, my father's brother, who I hadn't seen in probably 5 years. He lived across the country and rarely came to family events. But I remembered him being different from the rest of my father's family. More direct, less concerned with keeping everyone happy. I accepted the friend request, and within minutes he'd sent me a private message. Madison, I heard about last night through the family grapevine, and I wanted to reach out. I've been watching this dynamic in your family for years, and I'm proud of you for finally standing up for yourself. Your parents and Sarah are telling everyone you're being selfish, but I remember being at your 8th birthday party. Or rather, I remember being at Sarah's impromptu playdate instead. I've seen this pattern and it's not healthy. Don't let them guilt you into believing you're in the wrong here. Some of us see what's really happening, and we're proud of you for choosing yourself for once. Congratulations on your engagement. I hope Michael knows how lucky he is. Uncle David. I stared at that message for a long time, tears streaming down my face. Someone else had seen it. Someone else had noticed the pattern, remembered the sacrifices, understood what was really happening. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't imagining things. I was finally, for the first time in my life, choosing myself. And that afternoon, when Sarah called me crying about how she'd had to leave her work dinner early because she was too upset to focus, when she begged me to make things right with the family, when she asked me why I was doing this to them, I had an answer. Sarah, I said calmly, I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just not doing everything for you anymore. And if you can't tell the difference, that's something you need to figure out for yourself. For the first time in 27 years, I hung up the phone without apologizing, without trying to fix things, without making myself smaller to make someone else comfortable. I hung up the phone and started planning my wedding, a wedding that would include only the people who loved me without conditions, who supported my happiness without requiring my sacrifice in return. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt truly, completely free.